Great. So I am going to get started. And Casey, I'm so happy to see you again. First of
You
all, I
too.
love the
I
green
know.
sweater. You look
Thank you.
fantastic. And I would like to share a little bit about how we met before we get started, and then have you read a card for our group today. So, how we met is we met through Scarlet Sage. You came in as a reader, and I think we actually carried your deck at the same time you came in as a reader. Yes,
Hmm.
you were one of the very first independent decks that I was aware of. I know there was a number of you from the very beginning of that kind of 2018, 2017, 2018,
Yeah,
2019,
2016.
2016 of starting this decks that were independently created by an individual, by a reader and an artist. And you were one of those first decks that came in through Scarlet Sage, one of the most expensive decks we sold. And then there was even more expensive ones later coming. But you came in and you became a reader there. And then you founded Modern Witches Confluence when you were a still reader at Scarlet Sage, and we were able to support you through that journey. So we've known each other for at least 10 years now,
Yeah.
and really excited to interview you from the entrepreneur part of you, also the individual human woman, mother, now mother part of you, also,
Mhm.
which we can't separate when we're running our own businesses. So I would
Really.
love for you, we will get into the nitty gritty of you and how you got started, but since you're starting to read more for clients, I would love for you to open up with a card for our holistic business folk group if you're okay with that.
Absolutely. I'm shuffling right now.
Okay.
And it's funny, I got to my studio today and I realized I had left, because I was doing readings over the weekend, I left my Wanderer's Tarot deck that I always use at home, but I always have a deck handy or multiple.
Yeah.
So I'm pulling from my Rider Waite today, the classic, which I've come back to recently.
Mhm.
Old friend.
Yeah.
And I also just want to share too that I've been over the last 10 years, I've been really deepening my astrology practice. So I'm also doing astrology consultations now, which has
Oh,
been,
I love that. So maybe you can give
yeah.
us a little guidance on the next month, what we should be prepared for. We
Yes,
need we need all of it.
we do. Yeah, I know we do.
Good, good, good.
So I pulled the Hierophant for holistic business folk,
Mm.
which I love because the Hierophant symbolizes somebody who's really steeped in the tradition of being connected with spirit, being connected with sort of like a higher calling or a purpose. And that's what the Hierophant does. They sort of share their wisdom that they've developed over the course of their lifetime, that they've studied over the course of their lifetime with people who are seeking guidance, seeking, we could call it wellness. And so there's a lot of ways that I see this really connecting to the work that you're doing in this membership group space. Because you're all developing as a hierophant, right? You're stepping into your power and your wisdom in your own ways. And the hierophant is powerful because there's lineage there. So that feels important to bring into the space of like honoring your ancestral roots, honoring the roots of whatever system that you work within, and just really being able to like be rooted in that web of connection and knowledge. So I love to see this card.
Thank you.
And I do just want to mention, on the horizon, we are entering an eclipse season. We have an eclipse on February 17th, solar eclipse in Aquarius, which is a big restructuring moment in astrology. So it can help us kind of shed things we don't need to be holding so tightly to in our lives. And then right after that, on the 20th, we have a big Saturn Neptune conjunction in Aries, which is a big collective transit that's really shifting the way that we're going to show up in structures and shifting the way we show up in our own spiritual practice. So that's a big one. It's a big, big shift. And then we enter Mercury retrograde at the end of the month. So, good time to work on your taxes now. Get organized. Mercury retrograde starts the 26th of February. So put that in your calendar.
Thank you so much for that reminder. We need
Yeah,
those dates, astrological dates. I've been, as you know, since you and I have known each other for a long time, on the fence of believing in astrology constantly. And then it makes me realize how much it affects me when when I'm in it. I'm a believer. When
right.
I'm planning,
Hmm.
I'm like, oh, I don't want to plan around it. But then when it happens, I'm like, oh, this makes a lot of sense. So I'm more of a believer every
It's,
day.
I know it's kind of, I feel the same way. It's like I have this information, but I still have to live my life most
Yeah,
of the time. And so it just
definitely.
changes the texture of how you're living your life, is kind of how I've come to dance with it, I guess.
Thank you for all of that. And thank you for the reading. I love the
Yeah,
Hierophant. And we work a lot with lineage in this space and have been working with the archetypes. And this month, the theme is the magician archetype
cool.
because of the creation, the number one in the tarot, as you know, but the creation of something out of the ideas and possibilities of the infinite into reality.
Mm.
And so I would love to bring that magician archetype in and ask you about how you got started. So I know you got started as a reader. I want to hear the arc of your story of how you got started when you started thinking about publishing your deck. That's when I think your
Mm.
business really started, I'm assuming, but I would love to hear the beginnings of what that looked like for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess I wasn't necessarily really thinking about starting a business until I was encouraged to share the deck that I had created. Um, I created Wanderers Tarot in 2014 as like a creative project that I wasn't intending to make a deck that I wanted to publish or share, but I knew that I had been an artist my whole life. I had been studying tarot most of my life. And it kind of was this natural convergence of like, oh, this would be such a generative thing for me as an artist and as like a spiritual person to do. I would really love to do this. So I did that. I made a little copy from, I think there's like a print your own decks, like you can custom make cards online. So I got little copies made. I think I got remade. And I gave one to a witchy friend of mine. And it's like, have fun with this. I thought it was fun making this. And they really encouraged me to publish it. They were like, this is really good. Like you should like not that it's good, but there's something about a tarot deck and maybe some of you who use tarot decks, when you find your deck that speaks to you, it just kind of clicks and it works in a way that really resonates. And so they were having that experience. I was enjoying it and biased because it was my own. And they encouraged me to put it out there. And I started to really consider that. And I went to a tarot conference that year and met a lot of people, did some networking, like met Mary Kay Greer, who's a tarot hero of mine, and met somebody who did a workshop on like copyright law for tarot artists. And I was like, oh, I can do this. There's resources, there's a network. I was kind of seeing the landscape. And so being in communities like this one, and any other communities that you can that are related to your field is so generative because it just helps you understand the frameworks and the pathways that are available to you. Um, and so I set out to publish my own deck. And I do believe it was right after I figured out how to do all of the back end of the printing and getting the decks correct that I reached out to you, Laura, and I was like, okay, the next step is like building out myself as like a public reader figure so I can share this work with people, right? So it all kind of converged at once.
You independently published your
Mhm.
deck. So can you walk us through what that was? And then you ended up selling your deck at some point. Yes. So we would love to hear what that journey was for you.
Sure. So I yeah, like I said, I was able to kind of get some information from this amazing person at this tarot conference about sort of like the legal, like copyright, buying a copyright, getting registering an ISBN for a deck. And so I got a lot of that really grounded insight there. Um, and the work of self printing my own deck was a struggle. Um, and I think Laura, you had sent me some questions, and one of them was like, "When was the most expensive mistake you made?" And I think it was one of those early mistakes of working with a printer company and not getting a physical proof created, a one-off. And so I ordered like 100 of these decks, and the box was totally wrong and the printing was not the right quality. And I initially had really wanted to work with a printer in the United States. I felt really strongly about that. But as I worked with this printer in the US and they made these errors, and I started asking more questions about how they were doing things, and they were making me a custom die to cut my decks in the shape that I wanted. And it was all coming from China. So they were sourcing everything from China, bringing it here, printing it here, and sending it to me. And it started to become clear to me that all of the like the industry for printing is in China, and they know how to do it. They have huge companies there that work with artists and US games and all these like playing card manufacturers. So it just felt natural to me to kind of go to the source and go work with the people that had more experience, quite frankly, or had more resources in the end. And so I started working with a company over there that worked also on a lot of tarot decks. So I found out that they had a lot of experience and they sent me samples of decks they had done. And so I was really able to kind of get a feel for the product. Um, and it kind of snowballed from there and just happened. But I did financing side a Kickstarter for my deck. And that allowed me to like actually have the upstart capital to get these 1,000 decks printed, I think is what I printed initially. Um, and at the time, that was really a powerful leveraging tool. And I know that it's only, I think I raised like $8,000 for my Kickstarter. And I know, years later, tarot decks make so much money on Kickstarter. And so I was kind of like at the first wave of doing this sort of thing. And it's really been interesting to see how publishers in particular do a lot of crowdfunding successfully for their projects nowadays.
That's
So
interesting.
yeah.
How
Um,
much did it cost? We're really going into finances next month for everyone. How much did your deck cost? What are your COGS, your cost of goods sold
Mm.
for your decks when you
So,
first started publishing them versus the later stage, which obviously changes the more you publish?
right. So I remember that the cost of a deck for me, or the cost of a deck for me was $8, like 820 something dollars.
And that included
Um,
shipping.
yes,
Mhm.
that included shipping.
Great.
Um, yeah, so then I believe my deck cost $50
Retail.
retail.
But then you sold it to me wholesale for 25.
Yes.
So you had at least a 60%, maybe 70% markup on
Hmm.
that. That's a fantastic product to sell.
Yeah,
Good. That's a good margin. That's well done. And yeah, it's funny we say 70%, 80% margin. Yet you made like 13, 14, what, not even $20, right, on each deck. So it's funny, margins or percentages are one thing, but the actual dollar amount is a whole other thing because I sold it for $50 means I made $25 on that deck.
hmm
You made $17 on the deck.
hmm
So that does change how many decks that you need to sell in order to make your ends meet.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I think something that I reflect back on was I don't think I had like a really clear plan of like, okay, I need to sell X amount wholesale, or I should send X amount wholesale versus just direct to
Direct to
customer.
customer. Hmm.
Um, so that's something interesting to think about. I don't know.
Hmm.
And I would say too, the thing for me about like the cost or the labor of me managing all the wholesale accounts, doing all the shipping and all the operations, there was a lot that I feel like wasn't necessarily like, accounted for in that. Um, and as someone who was doing selling my decks and doing all of the operations for that, as well as doing client work, and then also starting Modern Witches, organizing this big event. My energy got really, I guess, strapped in a way. And that's one of the reasons that led me to seek out a traditional publisher, kind of freeing up more of my space and energy to refocus on art making, client work, and curation for these events.
Hmm.
But it was a definite shift um, in income because
Yeah,
of that.
I bet. So can you walk us through that, how you found that publisher? And then I would love to hear if you think that would still work today in the way that it worked for you a couple of years ago, because I know the publishing industry is different. And I'm sure some of the people here are thinking about publishing a book or have some things that they're
Mhm.
considering self-publishing and then going to a publisher, which is pretty
Right.
different than it was 10 years ago. I know that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, I started Wanderers Tarot in, I would say, like the golden era of social media or Instagram.
Yes.
When
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 people can make a
Instagram,
lot of money on social media.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you met people that you really had a connection. Like I met a lot of people on social media in the beginning days, and there were amazing independent queer women-owned shops all over the country that were excited about the deck, excited about, promoting my work. And so doing the wholesale for my decks was really marketing as well. Because I'd had people who would tag me on Instagram and people would find me in Minneapolis or wherever these shops were all over. So that was such like a wonderful time community to like have access to. Nowadays, the marketing landscape has significantly shifted, at least in my opinion.
It's not an opinion.
Yeah. Okay,
It's
good.
fact. It's a very real fact, which is a big thing that we are talking about in the next few months is how to communicate through social media, how to pay for that type of communication, what other avenues, which I know we'll get into with Modern Witches and how
Right.
you guys have done it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So by the time that I had decided to move into traditional publishing, I had some success in like building a network. And I think this is something about publishing that is unfortunately true is like your follower counts matter. Um, you're going to be more interesting to a publisher if you have a wider audience or a wide follower, high follower count, whatever. And it'll be interesting to see how that shifts moving forward. I don't know. But I reached out to Wiser Books just because they were a publisher that I had a lot of experience with growing up, just like seeing that like the Ankh logo on all my occult books. It's just Wiser Books was kind of like the pinnacle for me. And so I reached out to them, sent them a pitch, and was lucky enough to be received by them. And honestly, that was kind of it. Um, I know that's like probably an annoying story for folks, but um, I would say it's really good to have one published. Um, I think
Casey,
I froze for a minute.
your internet, yeah, your internet is going in and out. We didn't hear
Yeah.
anything the last 30 seconds. Okay.
Oh no. Okay. I realized that I was frozen. Where did you cut off when I talked about Wiser a bit?
You said, I think that might be annoying to folks, and then it broke up.
Oh, yes. I think that might be annoying to folks. Yes. But I do think there is something about knowing your niche. So I sort of knew that Wiser would be receptive to my work. I knew their catalog. So if you are seeking, you're wanting to be published, it's good to like get a sense of the landscape and who's out there and what they're interested in, what they're publishing in these days. So that was a big shift, but at the same time, it was the same year that Modern Witches really transitioned online and started doing more online work, which took up more of my time and brought me more income also. So it ended up being a smooth transition.
They say be generous with your content and stingy with your time. So I feel like that's where you transitioned your time into something that has a lot more meaning, a lot more profit. And it is hard. I know that to have to bag everything, ship everything, manage all the orders yourself. And that is where 99% of all companies start, is just doing it yourself and then realizing
Mhm.
there's a moment where it becomes unsustainable.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you had a really good transition there, even though I
Yeah.
know you had less money coming in per deck, you had the time to build something else. Yeah. Good.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's a good transition into Modern Witches. I'm sure everyone would love to hear how that got started, how it began, what it was, especially the first year, and what it took in order to launch that, including the amount that it cost. We want to get the nitty gritty
Yeah.
and who you needed to help you and any lessons learned from that very important
Mm.
time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I mean, Laura, you were such a massive part of the birth of Modern Witches, first of all. I remember we had many, many conversations about getting it going at Scarlet Sage. And it was really it felt like relatively simple in some ways in the early days of like, okay, I knew exactly what my costs were going to be, right? So I knew I had the cost of the venue in San Francisco. Um, I knew I had the cost of the workshops, paying the workshop leaders and teachers, speakers. Um, and then I could sort of, crunch some imaginary numbers around ticket sales and like have those projections around ticket sales. Um, so yeah, a lot of spreadsheet making, which I'm sure all of you are very familiar with at this stage. The cost of the venue in San Francisco was $8,000 for a full day.
That's not bad.
Yeah. And this venue was pretty big, a big auditorium, a couple auxiliary rooms, a huge presentation hall for a marketplace. Oh, that was the other thing. I had vendors. So I knew I was going to have income from my vendors as well. So I really just needed like the startup capital to pay the deposit, pay the rental, um, and everything after that, and pay the teachers, and everything after that would be like the profit. Um, so we definitely worked with the sponsorship model. And that's where Scarlet Sage also came in. And in the early days of doing this conference to kind of like prove it, we did a profit share with our sponsor. With our sponsor, I feel like it was you. I just looked at this. It was you, Rainbow Grocery. Um, there was maybe Fat in the Moon as well came on early. Um, And it was a great way to say, hey, take a bet on us, like kind of invest in this project. And if we succeed, you'll get some kind of a return on your investment. Um, and I believe the first year we also did this with our teachers, where we said, I'm going to pay you $150 baseline plus 2% of our ticket sales. And so everyone was guaranteed to be paid a fair enough wage for teaching a workshop, but they also were incentivized to promote the event, to sell out all of our tickets so they could make, at least an extra $150. So we were pretty clear about like what people would get if they invested in this kind of crazy idea at the beginning. which I think paid off. And it was really interesting to just continue to build this model of sponsorship throughout our years and try to build community partners where not only were they investing in our project, but there was also like a social capital element. People who recognize Scarlet Sage would say, oh, Scarlet Sage trusts modern witches, which, was a barrier for us. And I think still is just to have witch in the title of what we do. Um, it's extremely alternative, maybe a little taboo. So it helps to have these community partners that kind of are validating our work in a way.
I've always been impressed on how much you support community and how much you bring community in the work you do. And I think this just goes to show that if you want a big event, if you want to do something that is expensive and a
Mhm.
risk, that bringing other people in, and you probably didn't, I'm assuming you broke even the first year. You didn't actually pay yourself
No.
anything. Yes, this is generally
Yeah.
how it works for especially first year events. That's what happened with my French retreat the first time we went over to France and did our botanical perfume retreat. Our goal was break even. Like we just want
Mhm.
to test it. We want to see if it works. Our travel was paid for, our food was paid for. That's great, right? That's like a free
Mhm.
trip. You work your ass
Yeah.
off for that free trip.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
that is a great model to have is, does this work? Can I do this? Do I want to do this again?
Mhm.
As the goal of just getting over the finish line. Some people are not able to do things that are break even. They need to make real money in real time. And so there is a model that you could do that. Maybe you wouldn't do the profit share as high, or maybe you wouldn't have
Mhm.
done other things if you needed to make money in that first
Mhm.
year. But I think that's really standard. And I'm really impressed with how much you share that abundance with your
Mm.
community and how dedicated to equity you've been in this
Thank you.
process. Yeah, it's
Yeah, it's
amazing.
it's it's important. It's like a thing that I feel like my integrity around, and also it is challenging because sometimes it's like, oh, okay. When you're really community minded in that way, it can be really important to remember to also center all the labor and work you're doing and make sure you're getting compensated for it, you know? So,
Yeah, yes, yes, yes. Children don't get fed unless mama's fed.
yeah, exactly.
Good, good, beautiful. I am curious talking about modern witches because I think it's really important. What gap were you trying to fill? You talked about niche, and niche is a huge opportunity for everyone here. Herbalism is a niche. Certain alternative therapies are niches, and a lot of the people here, holistic anything, not anything, not these days.
Mhm.
Healers connected to their purpose feels like we have to know our niche really well. Can you talk about the gap you were filling to really focus on your niche with modern witches?
Yeah, yeah. Um, I grew up in the Bay Area, grew up really craving witches, craving witchcraft. And I studied with the Reclaiming Collective a little bit. Um, like I said, I went to these tarot symposiums. I went to some conferences in Portland, just connecting with these community of witches. And my sense was that I didn't necessarily see myself in these spaces a lot of the time. And I think there are a lot of people who have a very different orientation than me, people of color, who did also really didn't see themselves in those spaces, but felt really connected to witchcraft, right? And so I started having these conversations and started craving like this more modern approach to witchcraft that was more diverse, um, really inclusive, um, welcoming, and also welcoming of people who are witch curious, who aren't necessarily, haven't sworn an oath to Diana in a sacred grove or like been on some like deep lineage project, but want to know, like want to be invited in. And for me, witchcraft is a very creative thing. It's very individual. It is very ancestral, but it doesn't have to look like what it looks like for other people. And so the idea was to create a space that honored this more free form of witchcraft, I think. Definitely more diverse. And centering that in the beginning was really important to me and created conflict, quite frankly. Um, and it was really interesting to have conflict right away with that desire to be so inclusive because it made me realize like kind of the seriousness of the project, the stakes of the project. And I think it really solidified that this space was really needed, right? Because there was some pushback around our inclusivity. Um, so yeah, it's been an interesting thing to uphold throughout the years, and it shifted so much. We're also a very politically active, social justice oriented space as a community, and so there's often a lot to navigate there. And what I had to do was kind of bring in more people of diverse perspectives to kind of like support as a committee to help guide me. And that had its challenges and blessings as well. And so, yeah, I would say our niche um, really drew some ardent supporters and also did what a niche does, which keeps people away. And I think that's something that the niche, like the boundary of the niche is so important because it's going to draw the people who like know that it's for them. And that's fantastic. Those are your most engaged customers and community members. And it's also okay for your space, your product, your offering to not be for people.
Yeah, one of my favorite books, The Art of Gathering by Priya Parker, explains that really well. Of
Mm.
actually to increase inclusivity, you have to be exclusive.
Yeah.
And that concept and increase diversity as well. That concept was it's very interesting of that shift of, oh, actually I create in order to create a safe space, you have to have boundaries around that
Mm.
space. And certain people are not allowed in. Right. And I think talking about inclusivity is like, oh, everyone's welcome. And that's not actually the case because I don't welcome people with hate. I don't welcome people that don't accept my way of life. Right.
Mhm.
Because then that would be odd
Yeah.
to welcome people into my safe space. But it is that idea is really hard for a lot of people getting started to say, I'm not for you if you are looking for this.
Hmm.
And yet it's one of the most powerful statements you can make to actually get customers and clients that want to work with you directly because they want to
Hmm.
see themselves in you. And I think there's part of our brains that actually really fight against that exclusivity piece because we do truly want to be for everyone,
Yeah.
but we're not
Yeah.
for everyone. Just
Right.
naturally, we
You
can't
can't
be.
be. Yeah.
Yeah,
But it is hard. I've been there with the resistance. It's tough, but
it's
it's so
it's
important.
it's so important.
Yeah.
Can you share? I know we'll probably get into the dirty details of all that. I know a lot of it, but we'd be happy when the Q&A happens for you to share more if people are interested. But I'm curious, what is the lessons that you have taken away from running Modern Witches? If anyone was to run a new retreat or event today, what would you tell them to be aware of? Because we can only have this perspective after we've made our own mistakes,
Mm,
sometimes over and over again, sometimes new mistakes every time. But I'm just curious, those wise words that you have from your years of experience.
mm. Yeah. I mean, I would say keep it simple, even
What
if
does
it's
that mean?
big,
Okay.
right? Like, even if it's a big thing, um, find ways to keep it streamlined and simple because there's a way that big ideas and retreats and things like this, they are very complex and nuanced things to design. But in any way where you can trim excess, it will make the core idea or the core experience so much stronger.
Mm.
Um, and I worked with a committee that transitioned a lot throughout the years, and something about like being a creative person in a creative space, it's like everyone has all these amazing ideas and they are amazing. But when you start tacking on 1,000 ideas to the scaffolding of a business or a project, it just gets muddied and confusing. And so it is important to kind of, for me especially, I like move very quickly. I need to like slow my pace, test things, and just kind of keep the idea, the core principle of whatever you're doing alive and simple, and really trust that that's enough, you know?
It sounds like you've built a lot of leadership skills through this process. Can you give us any wisdom around how, what maybe lessons you've learned from bringing other people in to your vision? Because I think community-oriented people, I know this, community-oriented people, equity-based people, social justice focused folks want the committee, want the
Mhm.
other voices to make sure we're doing it right. Not perfect, but right enough, because there's no perfect, truly. You're always going to piss off someone no matter what, sadly.
Mhm.
I wish it wasn't the case. But there is more clarity after you've worked with people or employed people. I've had a committee over and over again. I'm curious what lessons around working with others that you can share.
Yeah, no, I think it's true. There's a lot of complexity, and I think ultimately when I step back from conflict that I've navigated at any stage, and big or small, it's always the conflict that is showing me something important about myself as a manager or a collaborator. And I'm not someone who necessarily shies away from conflict. Um, and so I think there's a way that conflict can help us clarify our vision. And I think that's important. Um, and I think it's also an opportunity to kind of admit our mistakes. I've worked with a lot of people who come into conflict, make a mistake, and aren't willing to admit that they've made a mistake. And I think that's an error point for me, because I think anytime when I feel resistance around a mistake I've made, I'm like, oh, this is a space I need to drop into and like kind of get more clarity around, right? Um, because there's always a lesson there. So I think it's really important to be able to see our mistakes clearly, um, admit when we've made one, and move forward with more information, right? It's like I think as Maya Angelou says, like, I know better, so I do better. And I'm butchering that quote. Um, but it is true. If you don't, you oftentimes we're in conflict with people because we've been ignorant to something, and there's always an opportunity to learn. So
Oh, you're very humble by saying all of these things. It's not
I've
easy.
been humbled.
I feel you on that one. I have been humbled many times. When you lead other people, it's you inevitably are going to get humbled at some point.
Hmm.
Um, I could go into that forever, but I'm not going to because I know we have so much information to get from you. You
Yeah.
have vendors, a lot of vendors
Hmm.
at Modern Witches, and many of them are my friends or people I know through the crafter world, as in creating their businesses, they're creating their practices, they're creating their products. I'm curious because we have a lot of product makers here. What are you looking for in a vendor when you're looking to bring on vendors for Modern Witches? Because I know this would apply to many different opportunities for folks if they want to start building their business, their physical product or their products like business.
Yeah, great question. It's one of my favorite parts about the Modern Witches events. I love the curation piece because there are so many amazing people making products these days. Um, and the world is so online. And it's such a blessing when we get to be in person and meet the people behind these products. And so I just want to say having the opportunity to be in physical space or, at an event where you can network with folks with your product is is always an opportunity I would encourage people to take. Um, but when I'm looking for products, Modern Witches, I would say, as a brand, is really about like fresh takes on, um, I would say, conscious products, clean products, anything that has like intention behind it or like a spiritual theme. And so I really enjoy seeing people kind of taking intention and weaving it into all aspects of their work. Um, it's like one of my favorite partners we've had throughout the years is Fat in the Moon, who obviously you know Rachel. And I just love how their product is so clearly defined. It has such a clear brand, and it's so true to this vision. Of like weaving herbs into our lives, right? And they do it with such artistry and connection to ancestry. And I think they're just such a good case study for a brand that's had such a strong, clear vision. They're not trying to be, their brand doesn't try to be anything else than what it is. Like I remember their labels early in the days, it was like hand drawn, um, black and white, just like very different. And so I think that's something to think about when you're working on your branding, thinking about, who are you as a craft person and a healer, and how can you be truly authentic to that without thinking like, what is the best color or typeface that everyone else is using?
Yeah,
I don't
we
know.
were able to interview Rachel a couple weeks ago,
Nice.
and she talked a lot about her process. And yeah, I remember seeing them at Fat in the Moon at Modern Witches the first year that you had, and the way that she sets up the space and has
Mhm.
built her company from the ground up is inspiring. She's
Mhm.
been doing this for what, 13 years now, so it's not overnight. When some people say, yeah, they became a millionaire overnight, 25 years overnight. It's like sometimes it takes that decade to figure out, am I doing the thing that really works, and how is it working, and oiling those cogs and getting things going, and then saying, okay, now I can breathe a little bit because it's out there in the world. It does take time often.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love that, Fat in the Moon. I'll see Fat in the Moon's booth at West Coast Craft, which is like a big craft market in San Francisco and I
Yeah.
think LA now. But um, it's a product that has these, to me, I see the witch in the Fat in the Moon, the name alone, but it fits both at a modern witches marketplace and at this like kind of very artsy indie craft fair. And so I think it speaks to that like, oh, authentic vision is what works.
Absolutely. And craft fairs, I mean, the first year I did Modern Witches, I think we made about $2,000 when that day, a full day. It was a lot of work, but it
Hmm.
was great. We saw a lot of people that were very curious. It was a
Hmm.
really good, they were our target market, exactly the person that would buy multiple products. They wanted to hear about all of them. So it was a really good opportunity for us to get out of the store and into the world. I know you also had some practitioners at booths. Can you talk to us about what that looked like? So for those of people that are here as practitioners, I could see Modern Witches and similar organizations as a positive place to get their practice out in the world. Can you tell us what that looks like and how people booked during at tables for their practice?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I used to do a lot of fairs like this. And it's such a great way to meet new clients. Like I've done West Coast Craft, a craft market that has nothing to do with witches spirituality at all. Um, but I had my decks there as an artist, and doing readings with people is such a great way to like let them into your universe and kind of give them a taste of what you offer. And so I always encourage healers to do shorter readings, maybe a little bit less than what you would normally charge. Um, and it's just it's kind of like not the same because it's not free, but like booking a consultation call. It's like that opportunity for someone, a client, to get an introduction to what you can offer, and they get some insights. Um, and they take your card, you get their email. So what I would do if you are working in a market as a healer is have a sign up sheet. I For the larger scale markets, I would have somebody with me, a friend that I would pay to sit with me all day and manage my signups. And I would have somebody come sign up for a time slot, what was available. So they would come back, write down their phone number, and pay for the reading. So they pay for the reading before they've even sat down with me, which ensures that they will come back. So that's a great way to do it, especially if you have a full day and you can just like book up your appointments and just set your time frames. You can book your breaks in. Um, and yeah, I highly encourage anyone who can do that work to do it.
Mhm. I had a friend that was at this. She lives in Bainbridge, Washington, and was at a farmer's market. And maybe no, it was a market. I don't. It was like an airline, Air Force, something. It was airplanes, and saw a tongue diagnosis person who was actually very, very well known in this lineage of tongue diagnosis. And he had a
Oh,
booth, and he was
yeah.
doing like 15-minute tongue diagnose things. And then obviously he had a practice and he has a whole clinic and a book and all the things. But
But
she was
perfect.
so
Yeah.
fascinated. Exactly. It's perfect. I've seen astrologers do this where they're like, I'm just going to do your top three. It's a
Hmm.
15-minute to 20-minute top three, and we're going to go through this. I've seen herbalists do this, and this is the hardest part because usually we're sitting with people for, 2 hours. But I've seen herbalists do this, and they've said, like, what's the one herb that I would recommend for digestion? It's like whatever their specialty is. It's like perimenopause or something, but they sit with people for 15 minutes and say, one recommendation would be this tea, and I'm going to write it down. Or if I have it for sale, then I would encourage you to.
Hmm.
But it's more of like asking those questions, having that dialogue. You have to get creative if you're not just pulling a card for someone or doing someone's quick, astrology. But if you're a therapist or if you're a herbalist, there's ways to, you could even have people smell oils or make something in your
Hmm.
booth, like make a tea for $10 or something, so you can have that dialogue. But I don't think practitioners use those types of experiences enough,
Hmm.
because getting one-to-one people is more valuable for your marketing dollars than trying to build stuff on social media sometimes, because these
Yeah.
are individual people who already want to speak to you, who spend the time to go and get at your booth and then hang out, and they're already in. They're the warmest in that you can get.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think our vending fee at the Witches Confluence, depending on, we've done smaller markets. Our small markets are $100 to vend. Um, our larger markets, I think we're $200 to vend. And some people kind of hesitate at that kind of buy-in. Um, but I've always had, especially if it feels like the right niche market for you. Um, I always have such a positive reception from folks. And it's worth it even if people are picking up your cards. It's a way to like really interface with people. So I think the marketing value alone is just fantastic. Yeah.
I love that. Thank you for going through all of that. That's really important for us to, as people are getting started, getting the word out there.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
how to do it all is the how.
Hmm.
How.
Yeah.
Wonderful. What would you say? Now, going back a little bit to what you were saying with critique and criticism and conflict, there's a lot of commodification in this space and in spirituality and in herbalism too. How would you say you navigate the commodification of witches and the work that you do that's deeply spiritual and make money doing this work, make a living? How are you balancing out that energy, that reality of folks who are very against people making money in this space, or even critical of
Hmm.
people making a living in these spaces, or critical because so many people are commodifying this work?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's so, I mean, the first thing that kind of jumped into my mind was just really being tapped into your intuition with your business. Um, I've had I've had some interesting opportunities that I've passed on because it didn't feel in my integrity. Like the Jeff Goldblum show on Disney Plus wanted to like do an episode with us, and I was like, I don't know if that feels like please put together a ritual just for this TV show. Um, and some people might be like, wow, I can't believe you didn't do that. But it didn't feel right. Like I knew that it wasn't the right thing for me. Just like who I am. For someone else, perfect, great. But I think it is really important to just notice that intuitive voice, however it shows up for you, the yeses and the nos. And everyone's going to have their own line with that. And I think it's just important to honor that. Um, and thinking about like what kind of legacy you want to leave through your business, through your work, and just like keeping that at top of mind at the end of the day. Um, I also think I'm a writer, so the thing that comes up for me with this question is really being conscious about how you're communicating about your craft and about your work and about your offerings, and connecting with them deeply, and kind of understanding how you communicate about who you are, your values, what you do, what you don't do as well. I think um, I've been in a journey recently of really going back through my website and making sure my website clearly illustrates who I am as a practitioner. Like I have a section of my values on my about page. I'm really kind of trying to make sure people understand who I am and the lines that I am holding. Um, and I think that's really important, and great to like reference your lineages, your teachers, show people that you've thought about it, you know? And be able to be in dialogue when people do question you as well. Um, something I that encouraged me to get off Instagram recently. Um, I guess I've been off for like 8 months now, but a big part of it was this lack of clarity I perceived from the people who I was in contact there. There were people who would question my values when I was screaming them from the rooftops, or so I thought, on this like very ephemeral platform. And so I really wanted to go back to my branding, my copy on my website, and just make sure that it felt aligned. And so someone could look and say, oh, I understand where she stands on XYZ. I feel safe with her as a practitioner because of my identity and their identity and all of those things. So guiding people to make an informed decision based on what I'm communicating to the world. Um, I think there's a really great book that I read recently that helped me with this process. Um, Radical Healership. Are people familiar with that one? I think it's Laura Northup wrote it. Might be getting that wrong, but it's an excellent book if you work with people. It's an excellent book if you don't, if you're just like in this space. I think it talks about the niche, and it talks about how to really communicate these things. So
Oh, thank you for that. I'm always looking for good books.
yeah, it's a good one.
That's wonderful. Radical healership. We will try to
Mhm.
link it if I can find it.
Hmm. And I
Thank
would
you.
say I'm gonna be updating my website all the time. Like it's something that's gonna be like a ongoing thing for me, just reviewing how I'm communicating my work, how I can really clarify it as much as possible for folks.
Yeah.
Um, and Substack has been a great platform for me to also continue to explore these themes and just really, because I went to a graduate program for philosophy. And so like I am like really deeply thinking about these things. And so it's been nice to be able to share a bit more about how I think about this world and the commodification of it and sort of the deeper aspects of it that are important to me. So finding those outlets too, you know.
So Modern Witches is, what does it look like now? Can you explain where you are now and that transition from being these big events in San
Mhm.
Francisco and what it looks like today?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, our last event was in 2024, last large event. Um, the venue that we've been renting for many years increased their rates so that when they sent me a an email about, oh, are you ready to book for 2025? The venue had gone up from in 2024, we spent $12,000 on the venue. So it had already gone up from 2018 to $12,000. And then in 2025, they wanted 16. So that was, I mean, that was like, okay, this no longer really makes sense to do it at this scale. I also had become a mother in 2023 and just like really wanted to refocus and reprioritize my energy, what I had of it. So now we are doing smaller scale events. We've partnered with a dear friend who has a space in Oakland, and we're doing these smaller marketplace, more local. And also, I'm working on curating more ritual engagements. So we're doing a Beltane ritual this year with Rohini, who you know, Laura, and hopefully another musical performer who I'm excited about and just kind of weaving in the artistry of ritual and art together. And just like really having experiences more so than these like big educational containers that we used to do. I'm really noticing that our community, based on the feedback I've gotten, we just kind of want to hang out at this stage. So more of that is what we're working towards. And then we have a podcast that is growing. It's grown this year significantly, and it's been really fun for me as a person to kind of get to talk to a diverse set of practitioners. It's a free resource, and is a great marketing vehicle for myself and for all the other people who want to be on the podcast. So I'm really enjoying that too.
Are you guys still active on Patreon?
We do have a Patreon, and our
Mhm.
Patreon funds our podcast. And so we do exclusive mini episodes for our patrons,
Mhm.
as well as quarterly online gatherings around the equinoxes and the solstices. So those are sessions that I host that are really grounded in like holding a ritual container, doing some sort of like magical reflection process together, and celebrating the seasons. So,
Thank you so much. And
yeah.
thank you for walking us through that arc and of journey that you've had with Modern Witches, with your tarot deck. And I know that you've, before we jump and open up everybody to ask questions, you also published a Modern Witches book. When did
Mhm.
that come out?
Yeah, so that came out in 2024.
Hmm.
And it sort of was a wee calculation of mine because I started pitching this idea with an agent right before I got pregnant, and I knew I was trying to get pregnant. So I kind of saw the idea of having a book project and an advance as like a little bit of a cushion when I was going to be on um, maternity and postpartum journey. So yeah, I worked on editing and compiling an anthology of 20 different practitioners together in one book to talk about the state of modern witchcraft in this moment. And it was a really lovely project for time in my life to be able to have an editing project and a writing project to kind of ground me as I was moving through pregnancy and postpartum. So, oh,
Thank you for
I'm
sharing all
unstable
of that.
again.
You've been a
Sorry.
prolific, you're okay. It passed.
Okay.
You've been a
Okay.
prolific writer and creator, so thank you so much for all the work you've done and offered so much to so many people. It's you're a clear visionary for that reason. So thank you, Casey. I am now going
Thank
to
you, Laura.
open it up to questions from our community. Does anyone have any questions? If they want to, they can just unmute and just ask.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. Joyous. That's nice.
Yes, Joyous just joined today. So thanks for coming, Joyous, to our community. Yay. Does anyone have any questions for Casey? I could keep asking questions if people don't have their own questions. Okay, people don't have questions. Oh, Brittany might have a question.
Oh,
She also has a
um,
baby.
yeah, actually, my question's kind of related to that. I'm wondering what other ways having your child affected how you run your business, because that's very relevant to me at the moment.
Great question. I love seeing this little head here. Um, yeah, it's such a massive shift. And I think, yeah, just naming that I kind of went into it a little bit naively of like, I'll be fine. I am an entrepreneur. I create my own schedule. Like I will be able to just kind of keep doing this, quote unquote. But it's so important to just honor your capacity. And I think what it really clarified to me is being able to notice, what aspects of my business are feeding me the most and what aspects of my business, aren't either generating enough income or aren't helping me grow as both a mother and a business person, a human. And so it was a very clarifying year, I guess that first year around um, what do I need to be investing more in, and what is most meaningful investment I can make in my business, and the most sustainable ones too. I felt it really important to like really protect my energy during that time. And I think, my son is only going to be 3 in May, and I think also giving yourself spaciousness to figure it out. Like I feel like I'm now sort of getting back into a rhythm with things. Where I feel like I have more spaciousness and more room for growth. And I think taking that incubation time to like sink into what is most meaningful for you at this time. I don't know if that resonates. Laura, what would you say?
Well, my kids are now 12 and 15, but I would say that first 3 years is the hardest because your
Mhm,
kid is not fully themselves yet as an
mhm,
independent being. And at 3, both of my kids were like, I'm ready to be out in the, I'm ready to go to preschool. I'm ready for the, it's so
mhm,
much easier when you're not worried about them dying in a puddle
mhm,
that you can actually have the mental space to start thinking about growth and what
mhm,
sustainable is. Some people are able to afford nannies and like that life. That was not my reality. So it was slower at the
mhm,
beginning stages of my babies. But I acquired Scarlet Sage when my daughter was 2 and my son was 5. So
mhm,
that was a rude awakening for me, for sure, of what my
mhm,
capacity was. And same, I had to cut out anything that was not necessary for me to do, including being on the floor, including sometimes my kids were in my office with me when I was doing numbers. Anything I could bring home, I would bring home.
mhm.
And you just make it work. I mean, women are amazing,
Yeah.
truly.
Yeah.
And a lot of people that are caregivers are now caregiving their parents. They're in that same situation where they're like, I'm on someone else's schedule half the time. It's that trimming down, like, what is the thing that's making you money? What is the thing that's wasting your energy and wasting your money? And that has to go. Even if you think it's important, it's actually, you just have to let it go.
Yeah. It's very clarifying in that way.
Yeah. my friend said this really well. She has 4 children. She said, children and caregiving people, so let's say children and other people that people care for, bring more abundance. And I was like, tell me more, because they're expensive. She said, everything becomes about having enough and having more, and being able to believe in that is actually the way that you make it work. And I just love that reframe of,
Mhm.
right, I actually need to make more money, or I need to create better space, and I do it. And it creates the situation where clarification, goal setting, all of these things start becoming essential versus optional.
Right. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I think it feels too important. Something that's been important for me is noticing what it feels like the most purposeful parts of my business too, because I think there's a way so much changes when you become a mother and your identity shifts massively, but there's also this thing, some things stay constant and you can really track like, oh, this is why I'm so drawn to this practice, or this is why I need to make art, right? It's like it also becomes clear like, oh, this is central to who I am, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to do that thing.
Mm, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me your astrological top 3 again. I forgot. You're Leo, right?
Yeah, Leo
Sun.
sun, Aquarius moon, Taurus rising.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
That's that Leo that, like, no. What's your
Yeah.
north node?
Aquarius.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's your justice. That's
Mm-hmm.
your, like,
Yep, exactly. The
collective.
community.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Not that I'm an astrologer at all. Nobody take this as me being an astrologer. Very
I
much an herbalist, very much on this planet. But yes, I love
but
that.
you have enough, you've had enough astrology people in your life to
Oh,
know.
yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yes. What other questions do we have for Casey?
I
Rachel.
don't exactly have the question formulated, but I'm thinking if I start talking, I'll kind of figure out what it is. But um, being that you've produced events that are witchcraft and witchy and kind of in the taboo space, my work is also very much in the taboo space around kink,
Mm.
sex, queerness. And I'm just wondering, do you have tips around navigating the taboo and like I don't feel any discomfort with my work, but I know people come to me quite uncomfortable, and I know that a lot of what I need to do is to help people feel more comfortable so that I can help them. And so I'm just wondering, like, if you have anything, if you were to look back on your journey that you really did that really helped create that comfort for people maybe that were just like unsure about coming into the space, or
Mm.
maybe bringing someone who's like bringing their partner or a guest that's unsure. Like, is there things that you
Mhm.
noticed really helped create that sense of comfort?
That's a great question. I think there's something about like what the term we use to kind of invite those people in is witch curious. And I think there's a way that maybe there's some like language or archetype you could kind of create for people who don't necessarily embody the same comfort as you, but have desire, right? Have desire to know, have desire for healing, knowledge, whatever it might be. And maybe you could create some kind of offering for those people specifically.
Mm.
Um, and I'm just reading your tagline here. It's like, what are some somatic, like processing things you could offer that just allow people get over that like hump of anxiety or whatever it is that they're experiencing? So kind of drawing out that niche and speaking directly to them
Mhm.
be interesting, I think. Um, and saying like this is the a workshop or an offering or a meditation or a practice that we're going to do in community that's just building your safety. We're not going to do
Mhm.
anything past that, but it's just about building your comfort and safety.
Yeah,
And
that's
then
usually
it's
the
like
initial work I do with people ways at first.
right.
Yeah.
So maybe you can just like really amplify that. And I think it's also about communication. Like I think that when I was starting Modern Witches, I did a lot of and thinking and writing about the taboo around it and trying to communicate that to people. Because it is the thing about taboo is like it's taboo, but it's interesting. People want to know about what you're offering, even if they're like a bit nervous, perhaps, or hesitant in whatever way. And so I think there's a great deal of education that's required with these kind of topic areas, I guess.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I don't know if that's helpful, but
it is. It's like it is, and witchcraft is quite different than sex. Like sex is like almost as important as food for many people. So it's like, and it's very hard to talk about for a lot of people that also find it quite important because they have like
yeah.
a shadow side they haven't explored yet, and like they're not really sure about revealing or being vulnerable. So yeah, I'm still kind of sitting with that. Just the difference I have with clients, like how comfortable am and how uncomfortable I can feel them feel when they come into their first session or just asking about a session or doing an intake call.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. And
being
maybe
a
there's,
practitioner for years, and just getting in that like so comfortable and kind of feeling a little out of touch with that discomfort.
mm, yeah, it might be interesting. I mean, we had a sex coach do little sessions at Modern Witches Confluence. And we hosted a Beltane event. It was all about pleasure magic. So we had sex and relationship coaches doing work in our spaces. Um, and I do think there's maybe some ways of like entering in from a different angle or community that could be interesting for you too.
Yeah, that's
Um,
a good point. Yeah. Thank you.
I love that,
yeah.
Casey. I love that you brought in naming it. I think for you, Rachel, that really resonates with me, where it's like naming that taboo. What does it mean to be safe in a space that feels uncomfortable? Like naming the process a little bit for those earlier people. One of my dearest friends came out as gay many years ago, but he was Mormon, grew up Mormon like I did. So he was really clear with me. It takes time for your family to come out too. And that was an interesting journey of like, I want people to change right away. And I'm sure you experience this, Rachel. This is your whole world. But like, what is that space between awareness and acceptance? There's that in between space. And what I'm hearing is that you want to fill that space to make it safe, that journey of acceptance or comfortability. And that's where I think naming that it's a journey, that makes a lot of sense, where it's like, this is going to take time and this is going to be ideally a beautiful experience for you and your partner or yourself or whatever that is. But naming that journey as a normal experience, I think might help people feel like, oh, I'm not a weirdo for thinking, being ashamed of this. Our cultural norms are very embedded.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah. I think my biggest challenge is not not keeping clients, but getting clients like to come and get started. Like once I'm working with people, they work with me for a long time and we do a lot of great work. But actually getting clients to do their first session is probably my biggest challenge.
Yeah, I
They
can
want
see
to talk about it for like years with me before they come in.
mm, yeah, more like seeing you on podcasts or some like interviews, like getting into other spaces and kind of like normalizing it just by having more exposure,
Mm.
perhaps.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I think the Modern Witches Confluence, that is a perfect niche for you because it's a very queer space already.
Mhm.
So entering those third spaces that have that not brand new audience, but people that might actually be a lot more interested from the beginning might be an interesting journey for you too, Rachel, to find those
Mm.
communities.
Yeah, in adult communities, I feel like it feels best for me to start to be in adult communities, not communities where there's children, because that makes it even more complex and
Oh
uncomfortable.
yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Cool. I love
So
that.
is that event an adult event?
Oh,
Is
yeah,
mostly all
primarily.
adults?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We yeah, people have brought their children, but it's not for kids. No.
It's not the focus. Yeah.
No.
That was a really good question. Thank you so much, Rachel, for asking that. That's really important.
Hmm.
And that comes in that defining niche. Like, where are those earlier people? Where are the, like, these are your first customers, these are your first clients, this is your major leads. Like, finding the right avenue takes a lot of time and testing.
Yeah.
Rarely do you find it the first time you went out and like did an ad or did an event. Or I would say a good example of this. We were asked to be on Channel 5, I think, like Meet San Francisco, Scarlet Sage, right? In this big event. And I had to pay $5,000 for the TV camera to crew to come, and we had to be closed and this whole thing, and interviewed me. And we were just like waiting for new customers to come in. We didn't see any numbers change. And we were like, oh, that sucks. And then I did this. I was asked during the wildfire season to come on to KQED, KPFA, like radical left, radio station, public media, at 8:30 in the morning in Berkeley. So I drove across the bridge. I was in San Francisco at the time for 30 minutes to talk about the herbs for wildfire, because I wrote a blog that was really popular. We had 100,000 people read it. And I had more opportunities from that 30 minutes that I drove across the bridge in the morning during rush hour traffic. I had more people calling me, more new customers than anything. And it's like, that is my community. That is my niche. I wouldn't have even known it until I knew it, but I almost took it for granted. But
Totally.
I listen to KPFA, those are my people, actually. Those are my customers. And so one of the ways you could think, Rachel, is just do that target audience questionnaire with your current audience, your current clients, and say, what do you listen to? Where do you get your media? What podcasts are you on? Are you on Reddit? Reddit is one of the most important marketing opportunities people have now, because more people go there because they're anonymous to ask questions. And there you can actually advertise and hang out on Reddit. So there's ways to hang out in where your community, where they're most safe to hang out. And I think it's different now. It's not just on social media. It's all these different communities, smaller communities, but very, very strong. Ask them where they hang out and see if that's a place for you to do, like Casey said, some interviews.
Yeah, I think more and more I'm seeing that, like, putting yourself in a situation that is like upholding your niche, but noticing the intersection between communities, right? And I think that's what Modern Witches tried to do, is like really say, yes, sex therapy is witchcraft. And like we found the sex therapist that was like, yes, this is like how kink relates to witchcraft. And like there are all these worlds, especially in the healing spaces, that really communicate to each other. Like, yes, astrology is connected to ritual. Or yes, astrology and herbalism also have connection. Like, and finding those connections and finding those partners and collaborators in your lives that can help you co-promote whatever you're doing and open you up to like different types of people that you might really resonate with what you're doing.
I love that. I think that intersection community makes a lot of sense, because then you can have a lot of options of who to connect with, because the Venn diagram is nice and juicy in those areas. For sure. For sure. I was just at an integrative medicine conference in San Diego, and all these doctors were there and MDs, and I'm the herbalist. And I guided the herb walk in the San Diego Botanical Garden. It was amazing. But the amount of curiosity that was there, and I was the only non-MD on any of the teachers. And I was like, there's an intersection here, because it's integrative medicine. They want herbalism, but they're not focused on herbalism. And so there's really interesting spaces to look into, that what is the closest thing, but they have to be curious enough to welcome you in also, right? That exclusivity from their part is safe for them, but they welcomed me. And so it was clearly something I was willing to put my money and time and energy into. And I didn't get paid for it. So it was like me going down and paying my own way. But I knew I wanted to try it out, and it helped because I was able to get some clients there. But that just goes to show, like, just listen and open and see who's saying they're interested, who's curious, who are these people, and what words are they resonating with. For me, they resonated with clinical herbalism. That got them curious, right? If I said I was a folk herbalist, I doubt that I would have been accepted into that community. So the way you talk about your world does, and state who you are, does either push people away or bring them closer. And you have to define your own brand of who do I want as my audience? Who do I want in my community? And what do people feel safe? And for me, I've always wanted more of a clinical space. I've always wanted to be accepted into Western medicine. And so that term was really important to me. But it's not important for all herbalists.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because they don't want to be in that space. They're like, that's no. I am living down by the river in my van and I'm stoked. And I want people to come hang out with me there and pay what they do. And I've never been that kind of herbalist. So truly be who you are and see what people awaken.
It's the values. Yeah. It's like people, the intersection that they're picking up on is you have to hold the same values. Like, what do you appreciate? What's like important? What's central to your work?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that you are your brand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what you call yourself, how you present yourself is what people I choose yes or no immediately. So who are those people and how are you bringing them in? And that I think is a big lesson for a lot of people getting themselves out there. Dress the part. Most people wanted me to wear Stevie Nicks clothes like you, Casey, every time. I'm like, gosh, it's not me. Sorry.
Yeah. Not what I'm doing. Yeah.
You always had such beautiful dresses on.
Yeah. That's my Leo.
Exactly. I love it. Yeah, my Scorpio wants to be the chameleon in many spaces.
Mm-hmm. It's
Yeah,
good. We all have our superpowers.
it's true. What other questions come up? Congruence, yes. Yes. Yeah, so I would say for you, Rachel, defining your perfect person and then figuring out who they are in real life and then asking them real questions. What draws you closer to me? What doesn't draw you close to me? Look at my website, get me honest feedback. That's gold. That's actual gold. And then those people will start showing up more and more when you start defining more about who you want to bring in. Yeah.
Yeah, I find that also to be like protective too of me because with my work, I get a lot of time wasters that come into my space, and I'm like,
Yes.
oh, this isn't a good match. I don't think I was clear there. Um, so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think it's also helpful in like maintaining my peace and my capacity to get super clear on and congruent with my message.
Rachel, have you thought of, and this is for everyone who's the practitioner here, thought of doing like a cheap event or a free event where everyone comes in and listens to you for 45 minutes or an hour and then can book with you for a cheaper session or whatever, instead of doing individual calls?
Yeah, I've done that and I like doing it. I just had surgery this year, so I'm out of practice and I'm just coming in with a fresh mind right now. But that has been helpful for me to do like I did a flirt workshop once and that was super fun where we just like played fun flirty games and passed a flirt around the room and some couples came and some singles came and some people left and went on a date and it was really cute and small and within my comfort zone. But I've done a lot of like those little ones and those do help get clients. Um, and help with just word of mouth. Even if I don't get clients, people will say, like, I went to this flirt workshop. I had so much fun. You should meet this person. She was fun. It felt safe. I didn't feel like my boundaries got pushed too hard. So people can kind of get a flavor of my work, especially because I live in Nevada City, which is a small town.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
Good.
Yeah, I did a workshop in just a week ago now. But it was at this art studio space, and I did like a create your own tarot deck workshop. And I was like, is this gonna work? Who's gonna be interested in this? It's an art studio. And it was really successful, sold out the workshop, got 2 clients. And so I think there is a way that I think more and more it's going to be this interdisciplinary approach. And like inserting yourselves in ways that you're like, oh, this feels like a lower barrier to entry almost as like, oh, you're not like learning how to read tarot. It's like you're just coming to do some collage in this like mystical theme. And it is kind of like a gateway.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. What other questions do we have for Casey before she jumps off? Thank you so much for spending this much time with all of us.
Yeah, no, this is fun.
It is fun. Talking about business is fun.
Mhm. It's good. It's good to be able to reflect in this way, honestly.
Good,
Very helpful.
good. Anyone else have any burning questions? No, everyone's pretty quiet. I'm curious, Casey, if you want to share a little bit more about how you're working these days. So you came from having your own published deck to starting Modern Witches to publishing Modern Witches to publishing your second deck. What does
Mhm.
your day-to-day look like now? Because I think as an entrepreneur, every year looks a little different, obviously, for all the reasons. But what are you doing for income? What are you doing in your business life now?
Yeah, so I guess this year I have like settled into a good routine with childcare. So that's like important. So I have like really reliable working hours during the week. Or fairly reliable. Um, so my days are sort of split between like focusing on marketing and writing, and then focusing on creating. So this year for me is really about getting back into a creation process after having released a book and spent so much time doing events. So I'm getting back into making art. I'm working on some book projects, um, and getting back into teaching as well. I think I'm at a stage where being back in a classroom and guiding individuals and groups is feeling really good. So I'm really enjoying that. And so income coming from client work, royalties, and teaching primarily, and then working towards a book advance.
Great. What does the
Yeah.
next book look like for you?
The next book, well, I have two that I'm working on at the moment.
Mhm.
But I am working on a witchy tarot book. And then I'm working on a book about oracles.
Mm, love that.
Yeah.
Oracle decks, oracles, people, oracles, historic oracles.
Yeah, historic oracles and kind of this concept of reviving the tradition of like the oracular tradition as a sort of antidote to what's going on with AI and large language models and kind of rooting back into a meaningful relationship with the earth through
Mm,
the oracular tradition.
I love that so much. I was reading this, I think it was in Vogue, all these different fashion designers that were predicting what was going to be next. There
Mm,
was only one that stuck with me, and they said, I think we're all going to go back to our ancestors. We're all going to become indigenous again. And I was like, yep, that
yeah,
person, I can trust that fashion designer.
yeah.
And I think that's pendulum swing. I'm seeing it. People want to be in person with experiences connected to plant, connected to humans, and that connection to spirit, but grounded in nature is really clear.
Totally. You
Yeah.
know, Uranus is going into Gemini and it's been in Taurus for 8 years or so.
Okay.
And Uranus and Gemini is sort of like a proliferation of ways of communication and skills and technologies. And so, a lot of people are saying this is where AI takes off and does whatever it's going to do to us. But it's also an opportunity for people like us, holistic people, to be these like real lineage holders and skill sharers because there is a real drive back to analog. Um, there is a desire for like sensual, grounded experience that I think is going to be so invaluable once AI really does take off. So, um, I would say it's really important now to just like kind of ground into whatever you're offering and be able to communicate it because that's where we're headed.
Thank you so much, Casey.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for your time today. Thank you. Anybody else had any last question before we say goodbye to Casey today? Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It was so great to chat.
Yes. Have a beautiful rest of your day. And I will see you all later. Thank you so
All
much.
right. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.